Now that we know what the hell a constraint is, what the heck do we do with one? And that's what Goldratt came up with, 5 focusing steps. The first printing of the gold did not have these 5 focusing steps in there. He came up with these after 1984, and then the second edition had, towards the end, had these 5 focusing steps. And it starts with a very simple one. What the heck is the constraint? Identify the system's constraint. And they can be more than one. So I've got parentheses around the S's. So let me talk about the parentheses around the S's. I won't talk about them anymore. So that the plural means that you could have a system, theoretically, that has more than one constraint at the same time. I don't mean a system where it goes back and forth between I come out of the I get an order and then it goes into the oven, and the oven, it sits there for a long time until it comes out of the oven. I can't get it. I can't do anything. The oven's the thing that holds me back the most, and it goes back and forth between orders and ovens. So that's possible, but that's not what I'm talking about, because in that situation you would just have one constraint at a time. But it is theoretically possible that we could have 2 resources that were both equally loaded. And in fact, this is the 6th situation that we find that engineering new plants tend to want this exact situation where there are multiple constraints. I sat on the plane one time with a guy, and he was working on something. I thought it was really interesting. I was kind of looking over at him, like this, like you do on the plane, where you don't want to let the guy know you're looking at it. But I got so interested that I had to strike up a conversation, which I normally don't do on a plane. And I said, "What are you working on?" He goes, "Oh, I'm laying out a new plant." I'm like, "That is so cool." I said, "How do you do it?" He says, "What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that the output of the shear is equal to the output of the different things, so I don't spend any more money than I have to get this plant to run." I went, "Oh my God, whatever you do, don't do that." And and the poor guy, he must have been really sorry he sat next to me on the plane. But I explained to him that if he does that, he will not be able to manage his system at all. It'll be an absolute nightmare. And I tried to explain something about how it is. When you don't know what to focus on, you don't know what to do. When you don't know what to do, you have chaos. So he was building a chaotic system. Anyway, so the next step, once you know what the constraint is decide how the heck to exploit it. And I'm going to assume from now on that there's only one constraint, because practically speaking, if you imagine that that something holds you back the most. Okay, so I'm going to forget it. Theoretically, it's possible of the S's, so technically they have to be in their little parentheses. Forget about them. If any system that I have, it's going to have a constraint, one constraint at a time, and I'm going to be very careful about what that constraint is. Anyway, the second step is make a decision in your head. No action. We haven't done anything yet. We're just thinking. We're planning. What should we do to exploit the system's constraint? Because if we exploit the system constraint, the system gets more gold units as a product. Is that clear?
Yes.
So then the next step, before we've done anything, the first time we actually do something is when we subordinate everything else to the decision we came up with in number 2. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like we have a constraint, for example, we would call it a constraint in the market at shipper supply, that if we had more orders, we would make more money. Right now, that's a particular challenge because we're in the middle of the shutdown from the COVID-19 virus. So as our customers shut down and our customers' close, then there's less work to do. That results in less orders coming into us. That results in less profit. So everything we want to do, everything we can do to increase the amount of throughput we get on the orders that come in, or increase the orders that come in, those are how we exploit our constraints. So what we decided to do right now and this time is to look at the new volume that we have and raise prices, which seems counterintuitive to raise prices in a recession, but we're raising prices to make sure that we make enough money to be here when the COVID opens back up and business goes back to working again and our customers need us. What the customers don't need is us to be gone, because we provide a valuable service to them, which is providing them with about 1/4% of their annual purchases. If we're selling a manufacturing plant, which is our typical customer, we sell them about 1/4%. So raising prices 2 or 3% on 1/4% creates what I call budgetary dust. It couldn't possibly make any difference to them. But on the other hand, if we go out of business during a slow time like this, and we're not there to provide the packaging equipment and supplies that our customers need to be able to ship their products, then they won't be able to make any money, or they'll have to go to competitors who do a worse job than us. So does that make sense?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so pricing, so actually raising the prices means we do that. And then subordinate means something else. It also means we don't let other stuff get in the way of raising the prices, right? Other priorities are not as important as that. We're working as fast as we can on raising prices. That's our priority, as long as that's our decision in step 2. Now, once we've done enough of that, we may say, okay, prices are up as much as we can. Now, how can we sell more? Or to whom can we sell more? That would require a different decision in step 2, and then resubordinate to that decision and work in that fashion. So if we do this, it has us focus on the right thing. Next step, elevate the current constraint. Elevation means usually paying some money, investing something, buying something, adding more capacity, something like that. It usually means spending money on the outside. And isn't this interesting? Because in step 4, this is the first time we've had to spend any money. It didn't cost us any money to identify our constraint, to talk about what to do to exploit it, or to subordinate to it. Those were free. That's why we do them first. Then the spending money comes in step 4. And if any point in time the constraint gets broken, then we go back to step 1. And then there's this second line that says, beware inertia. And it's got 4 exclamation points, because Ellie Goldratt said, I need 4 exclamation points there. And when he said that, the copywriter said, oh, no, that's bad English. He goes, leave the 4 exclamation points there. And the copywriter says, oh, okay. You know, you're the author, right? So he said, I'm not asking for correction. I meant there to be 4 exclamation points. Why is this such a big deal? Well, inertia has 2 things. And remember, inertia says that an object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to remain in motion. That's inertia.
Yes.
And we have mental inertia. So up here, we've decided to do things a certain way, but the constraint just moved. Let's say the constraint was the number of fork trucks out in the warehouse, and we decided that was a silly thing to do. And we did everything we could first to be able to utilize the fork trucks more. And even though we timed the amount of minutes that the fork trucks were not in use, and it went to a very small number, we still couldn't get all of our orders out. That would be not exploiting the constraint that's in the marketplace. So we might go to step 4 and say, let's buy another fork truck or lease another fork truck. So we lease another fork truck, we have enough people to go on that fork truck, so we put that guy on the fork truck, and suddenly our orders start going on again, and we go back up to full throughput. Before, we were constraining the throughput through the fork truck. Now when that happens, our constraint moves back around to being back out in the market again, where I think we would prefer it to be. That's an example of kind of what's going on. If you don't know that the fork truck's standing in your way, you've got mental inertia. You still thought your constraint was in the marketplace, but it really had switched to the fork truck. If that ever happens, we got to jump on that and move on that fast. And it's possible to think that things were the way they were, and now they've changed, but I didn't recognize the change. What I'm saying here is that when we don't get to step 5 often enough, we should constantly check to see, are we at step 5? We should be asking ourselves that question. So that's what beware of inertia means. Don't keep using the same plan that's no longer pertinent for the situation you're in.